Hello, and welcome. Whether you're listening in the quiet hours of the night or resting in a calm moment during the day, this gentle journey invites you to step into a collection of colonies slowly drifting toward independence and quiet change. Make yourself comfortable. Let your breath soften and slow. Allow the noise of modern life to fade as we settle into the unhurried rhythms of the American Revolution and the founding era. This is the American Revolution and founding era, a serene, reflective exploration of how ordinary life continued as history gradually unfolded. Take a slow, steady breath. As you exhale, imagine early morning light resting over small towns and countryside, wooden houses, dirt roads, and fields stretching quietly into the distance. The world here moves at a slower pace. In this peaceful retelling, there is no battle, no urgency, only gentle observation. We move slowly through years of meetings, letters, and long conversations, noticing how ideas formed, decisions were debated, and daily routines carried on. Picture yourself standing near a quiet town green. A bell rings softly. Papers are folded and carried beneath the arms. Shops open, farms wake, and people gather to talk, listen, and then return home. Change comes not all at once, but gradually, through discussion, patience, and shared moments. Though you remain safely where you are, you may sense the calm persistence of everyday life continuing alongside larger events. In the chapters ahead, we'll explore the American Revolution and founding era, how communities lived through it, how independence slowly took shape, and how new systems of government emerged through careful planning and cooperation. We'll move gently through these years, letting history unfold like a quiet dawn over a young nation. For now, settle in, breathe deeply, and allow this peaceful journey into early American history to begin. Now close your eyes for a moment and imagine drifting back in time to a quiet colonial night. A lantern's warm glow shivers on weathered boards as gentle darkness settles over a village. The year is the late 1760s, and a hush drapes itself over the countryside. A few farmers ride home through the twilight fields, the soft clop of horses' hooves on dirt roads just audible beneath the distant chirp of crickets. Smoke curls upward from stone chimneys, and the scent of baking bread drifts along the breeze. The morning light drifts slowly across the quiet fields of the colonies. Gentle rays of sun touch the timber-framed homes and the long, winding roads. It is the mid-1760s. In this soft dawn, we find ourselves among simple people whose lives are about to change. Each face is calm, each step measured. The world they know is mostly peaceful, at least for now. In the aftermath of a long conflict called the French and Indian War, silence hangs over the land. The war has just ended, and armies rest. The air still carries the faint scent of campfires and muskets now cooling in the distance. British soldiers and colonial militiamen walk slowly through villages, talking in quiet tones. The conflict has left Britain in debt, and in these early mornings, we imagine elders speaking softly in village council halls about how to pay it off. Gentle candles flicker as people count the cost of war, discussing how to balance their books without stirring unrest. Life in these years is humble and slow. Women stir porridge, children milk cows, and horses breathe slowly in their stables. In town centers, shopkeepers sweep fallen leaves off porches, lining up goods quietly for another day. No one is rushing yet. The world is still turning kindly. In the parlors and meeting houses, whispers of new rules drift through the air. Under the gentle brilliance of daylight, men open newspapers printed abroad and find mention of a stamp act. It will require stamps on letters and documents. A small change, but a heavy burden. Farmers furrow their brows as they hear the news over morning chores by the hearth. In Baltimore or Boston, they ask each other softly about this idea of taxation without their say, each question trailing off like smoke. As summer turns to fall, more laws arrive like fallen leaves in autumn. We feel the tension in small clusters of friends who exchange glances by the hearth at night. The townshend acts impose duties on everyday items like paper and tea, but most mornings begin with routine chores. An iron pot simmers with stew on wood-burning stoves, and brass candlesticks hold their glow in silent kitchens. In those quiet rooms, families listen to the crackle of the fire more than the political news. They chop wood and churn butter as the outside world prepares to change slowly around them. By the winter of 1770, a heavy hush follows a distant tragedy in Boston. One cold March night under dimly lit streets, a confrontation left several people dead. The next dawn, families walk the empty square in stunned silence. Snow covers the cobblestones, and nobody speaks loudly. Later that day, a newspaper arrives from Boston, carried by horseback, bringing word of the event. Families gather close to the hearth, speaking softly about what happened, not knowing yet what will come of it. The children sit wide-eyed but calm, and the parents choose gentle words to explain. The fire crackles quietly, as if to cover their sadness. Time moves on. In that same port city, the year 1773 brings a quiet determination. December brings long nights and cold rain to Boston Harbor. Under pale moonlight, a small band of colonists gathers by the waterfront. They are disguised simply with cloths and paint, feathers in hats and faces darkened by coal dust to hide their identities. They step onto the deck of a moored tea ship. Hands move steadily, tipping wooden chests of tea until they float gently in the dark water. The sailors stand watching, silent and motionless, as the tea dissolves into the harbor. After the last crate sinks, the group disperses under the still night sky. The harbor returns to silence. The boats gently rise and fall on the calm water, as if none of it had happened at all. When spring brightens the year 1774, more changes come. In Britain, new regulations aim to punish Boston for its silence at midnight. The intolerable acts, they are called, stack up in cold legal words. Kings and councils discuss them quietly in London, but in the colonies they tighten like a noose. In Boston, the city hushes under the weight of these laws. Ports close, ships remain still at the wharves, and government buildings keep their doors locked. People respect the law, so houses are quiet except for the occasional muffled footstep of an official in the street. Residents gather in small meeting houses and whisper about their next steps, but outside the houses, life seems frozen in a heavy calm. It is autumn 1774 when delegates from different colonies gather in Philadelphia. The First Continental Congress meets in a large brick building. Sunlight streams through the windows into a chamber lined with wooden benches. Gentle voices speak of shared concerns. Each delegate is dressed neatly in coat and breeches. They lean forward quietly, listening. Outside on the street, passers-by sense something important happening inside, but their footsteps are quiet as if in respect. By candlelight, the delegates continue their discussion late into the evening. The room is lit by gentle lamps, and all speak in low tones, as if aware that the entire country watches. There is no shouting, only the soft rustle of papers as they pass resolutions. Soon winter melts into the spring of 1775. Tensions rise beneath the calm everyday. Ordinary routines still fill the days. Fishermen cast nets into rivers at dawn. Women hang laundry on wooden lines. Children race on dirt roads to schoolhouses where a teacher quietly writes letters on a black slate. But behind those scenes, worry brews. In April of 1775, a pale sunrise touches the village of Lexington, Massachusetts. A few militia stand gathered on the green as roosters crow. They wait with muskets, each man steady and alert. It is still cool, and everyone moves in deliberate silence. Then suddenly, a sharp crack breaks the quiet dawn. For a moment, the air is thick with smoke and confusion. When it clears, silence returns. Men on both sides are wounded or worse, but now as the sun climbs higher, the battlefield is eerily still. Old oak trees cast long shadows, and birds begin to sing again, unaware of the day's event. Locals step outside their homes, each face solemn but gentle. They gather fallen muskets and bandages quietly. Some tend the wounded by matches of straw and old torn cloth. Children peep from behind houses to watch, and mothers gently steer them back indoors. The hush of morning falls again over Lexington. It sounds like history taking a breath. News travels by horseback to Concord, where more colonial fighters await on another village green. Horses' hooves echo on dirt roads. The morning is light by the time the colonists in Concord see the red-coated soldiers arriving. There is a clash. For a few tense minutes, muskets fire and men shout. But then, as evening settles, the field cools. Smoldering campfires cast an orange glow over the tidying of tents. Warriors on both sides nurse weary arms. This quiet of the aftermath is heavy and solemn. Some look toward the sky, others at the ground, breathing slowly. These nights of war turn out to be short-lived, but at this moment the soldiers feel a stillness, as if nature itself is watching and waiting with them. Soon after, men again flock to Philadelphia. The Second Continental Congress convenes in May of 1775. Delegates sit around another wooden table under the high ceiling of Carpenter's Hall. They look more determined than before, but still respectful and measured. By daylight, they discuss ways to help those soldiers, still under the open sky. They do not rush. They select a general to lead them, the quietly determined George Washington of Virginia. He is dressed in his uniform of blue and buff, his hair tied back in a queue, his face calm but resolved. He rises to speak, and his voice is measured. The room listens. Even the city outside seems to slow, as if to catch his words. That afternoon, as he leaves the chamber, the afternoon sun has turned gold on the long avenue, but Washington's expression never hardens with pride. It remains thoughtful. He simply bows, mounts his horse, and rides slowly into the quiet countryside to gather the troops. Across the countryside, tiny wooden cannon roll into place. In June of 1775, at Bunker Hill near Boston, a new morning rises. Patriot fighters dig shallow fortifications on the hilltop. By the time the British soldiers ascend, the Americans stand ready. A disciplined volley of rifle fire breaks the still morning air. Though the noise was sharp, it quickly fades and the battlefield quiets. Men lie still until morning, the crackle of dying campfires the only sound. Yet despite loss, the colonists feel a strange strength. At day's end, a few of the Americans who were in that battle gather around a small fire off in the woods. They warm coffee and quietly compare notes. Even in the midst of war, they find moments of calm reflection. In the years that follow, the conflict spans from the rolling hills of New England to the forests of New York and beyond. We walk beside the Continental Army as they march. The path can be narrow and the forest is thick. Leaves fall softly on their hats as muskets clank in rhythm. Dried rations of bread and salted pork fill knapsacks. The men eat quietly together in small groups known as a mess. They make simple stews by boiling whatever they have, sometimes a hunk of salt beef or a handful of dried peas, and they take their time. A makeshift Dutch oven bubbles quietly over a campfire. Each man ladles stew into tin bowls. The meal is far from fancy, but for now it tastes like comfort. Some nights they sleep in log huts they build with mud and sticks. Inside, their muskets lean against the damp walls, and straw blankets are laid on the hard ground. 2 or 3 men share a hut, each breathing in the smell of pine and wet wool. They talk softly about home, a father's voice at bedtime telling a tale, a mother's smile as she sets a steaming platter of food on the table back in Pennsylvania or Virginia. They light a candle made of tallow, letting its flicker dance across the wooden beams. Without fanfare, they pass around a harmonica or softly hum an old folk tune to settle their nerves. One by one, they drift off to sleep to the chirping of crickets and the whisper of the wind through the trees. At dawn, boots stir. Riders weave among the tents to deliver mail. The men snap awake as letters are handed to them. Each holds a letter carefully, wiping soot from the paper with a corner of his worn sleeve. Their names are written in flowing script, penned by a wife or sweetheart or mother. They unfold the pages as sunlight slips between the pines. In those lines, they read words of love or reassurance. A small smile breaks across lips as morning light shines on the paper. For a few moments, all is quiet around them. They fold the letters back up and store them near their heart, the token of home that made the journey thousands of miles. As the war unfolds, Europe's interest is kindled. In late 1777, on a gentle summer day near Saratoga, 2 armies face each other across a meadow still green with grasses. British troops led by General John Burgoyne move slowly in tight formations. American forces hold their ground under General Horatio Gates. For a moment, everything holds its breath. Then, by nightfall on October 17th, 1777, General Burgoyne lifts a white handkerchief from his gray coat. The armies all wait. The British lay down their arms. The silence is profound. In a nearby farmhouse, the candles burn long into the night as officers pen reports and share a few quiet words about tomorrow's prospects. There is no cheering, no music, just a feeling that something important has come to pass. The peace that follows is soft, measured, an ocean we cannot cross, but the gentle lapping has reached our shores. Meanwhile, across the Delaware River, winter at Valley Forge approaches. Late 1777 brings cold nights where snow crunches underfoot. Gentle clouds drift past the crescent moon. Inside sparse cabins, candles shine against walls of rough wood. Soldiers gather around small fire pots to chase away the chill. They huddle together under scraps of homespun wool. The smell of stewing vegetables and salt pork holds back the hunger each night. George Washington, ever composed, quietly inspects the camp. He passes from hut to hut wearing a heavy coat, greeting each man by name. His eyes reflect the firelight as he listens to their whispered concerns, missing food, aching feet, bitter cold, and offers a few words of encouragement in return. Sometimes he stands silently watching the sky as snow begins to fall, deep in thought. Each day, the camp's baker, if any can be found, mixes coarse flour with water to bake ovals of dense bread, known as hardtack or fire cakes. They taste dry and bland, but the soldiers break them and dip them in coffee or in a thin gravy when they can. The men share what little they have, splitting a single turnip among three with quiet fairness. On particularly cold nights, a drummer boy's gentle beat leads them to morning assembly. They drill quietly, forming ranks on the frozen ground. The sound of leather boots scraping on ice is the only sound in the silent half-light, and so but a remarkable transformation is happening. Under the patient instruction of officers and a stern but kindly drill master named Baron von Steuben, the soldiers straighten their lines. By spring, the men of Valley Forge will stand more alert, their muskets primed and together, their uniforms better fitted. Yet in this stillness, no one talks of glory. They talk of surviving together, of hope in each other. Through these moments, each man writes his own story. A private in a valley camp keeps a journal. He scribbles about the frost on his beard, about dreaming of milder days, about missing a warm fireplace at home. On page after page, he draws the landscape of frozen trees and smoky hearths in careful detail. Another, under a flickering lantern in his narrow tent, writes a letter to his wife. Her name curled at the top, it is beginning gently, "My dearest," and ending with love and faith, even as the lamp sputters. In all these quiet words, hope travels across the miles, bringing comfort to homes far away. Finally, in the spring of 1778, the end of that winter brings a burst of color. Crocuses and snowdrops peek through the melting snow. Washington leads his army out of Valley Forge, and over the fields, now dotted with daffodils and willow catkins, the soldiers march lighter in step. Even as cannon smoke fills the air in spring skirmishes, each volley feels strangely normal now, one more sound on a busy morning. The men laugh when they can, and even in scarce moments, they hold dinners together. One evening, George Washington joins his officers around a rough wooden table under lantern light. There is simple fare, a hearty stew, bread, and sweet potatoes. The general eats calmly, spooning soup methodically. He listens quietly as men speak about New Year's traditions in their villages, a gentle talk of family, not just strategy. The meal is peaceful, with only the clink of spoons and soft laughter to fill the cabin. After Valley Forge, with better training, the Americans win another victory. At Yorktown in 1781, the year turns, the seasons pass. On a Sunday morning outside Yorktown, Virginia's, the fields lie calm. Two armies face each other again, but one has been waiting in silence. Then, one crisp October morning, the British banner is lowered. The soldiers kneel and lay down arms under a watching autumn sky. No guns fire. It is a surrender, not a fight. For a moment, only the whispers of the trees can be heard. Later, cannons fire a salute of triumph, but even that echoes with some dignity, bouncing softly among the distant hills. When the surrender is done, the battlefield's empty. A few American soldiers pause in their march. One kneels to pluck a wildflower and slip it into his hat, as if marking the day quietly. Others just breathe, letting the breeze wash over them, grateful that the long winter of war is ending. Across the nation, news of peace travels. Bells start to toll in town after town, yet even these bells sound like gentle ripples on a pond, ringing in slow rhythm. Families embrace along country lanes. In Philadelphia, at night, a small celebration takes place. Men and women dance to the lively jig of fiddles, but their smiles are calm with relief. The tune is light-hearted, but the fiddle's touch is gentle on the strings, fitting for those who need rest. Musicians play on a small wooden stage. The tunes rise softly and drift out into the warm evening. Between dances, people stand on porches sipping cider and sharing a laugh. They speak in normal voices, grateful that after years of war, they can finally think of planting crops instead of muskets. Now, with the war behind them, the new United States faces the challenges of peace. Soldiers return home, some with hearts full of quiet pride, others carrying scars only the night knows. Fields that were battlefields yesterday now need planning again. The government, under the Articles of Confederation, tries to manage things. After the war, it often finds its hands tied. It has no power to raise taxes, to pay debts or soldiers. In towns, shopkeepers exchange quietly whispered worries about the paper money that seems to shrink in value, like melting snow. Veterans often shuffle off the battlefield still in uniform, only to discover that the promises made to them have been slow to arrive. In a lodge hall in Massachusetts, neighbors sit in a circle by lantern light. One elderly farmer clutches his draft pay certificate, brow furrowed. His young wife, knitting beside him, whispers faith that Congress will fix things. For now, people simply keep going. Quiet dinners at home, children learning their letters, horses plowing fields once more. In 1786, that farmer's worry gathers strength. By candlelight in a little barn, Daniel Shays, a weary veteran, leads a group of other farm owners and soldiers. They whisper plans to ease their burdens, moving in the twilight from town to town. In January of 1787, they step across courthouse lawns in the quiet dawn to protest their taxes. Sashes of tricolors are folded carefully beneath their overcoats. Some soldiers from the Revolution stand beside them, somber and steady. The protest is small, almost hidden under the winter fog. In the end, calm reason returns as a voice from town officials offers to negotiate. The farmers slowly disperse, trading firm words for promises. No one fights. They depart quietly as smoke rises from nearby chimneys, a reminder that homes must still be fed. Soon, as crops grow and summer returns, leaders feel the need for a stronger plan of government. Under a mild spring sky in Philadelphia, delegates gather again at the State House. The Constitutional Convention of 1787 begins with formality and composure. They hang thick curtains at windows, trying to keep their voices from drifting out. The room is warm with quiet concentration. James Madison from Virginia takes notes meticulously, his quill scratching in the back of the hall. Benjamin Franklin, older now, sits in his chair wearing a fur cap, kind eyes nodding at each point made. He often cracks a gentle joke to ease the tension, enough to make a few shoulders relax, but not to break the dignity of the meeting. They debate how to give each state a voice. Senators and representatives, large and small. Voices rise and fall, but always in controlled tones. Delegates from big states like Virginia expect more seats, while smaller states like Delaware want equal say. Some men lean forward quietly, listening. Others jot notes. At last they agree on a two-house Congress, one reflecting population, another giving every state its chance. When this resolution comes, a soft murmur spreads across the room. Some delegates exchange quick handshakes. They take a breath, pleased that this compromise, though imperfect, might hold them together. Slavery is a shadow on their discussion. Gentle, thoughtful men discuss how to count human lives. It is not done loudly. They finally settle on a plan, counting 3 of every 5 enslaved people for representation and taxes. It is a grim compromise, but they whisper that at least they have found a way forward. They move on to other issues, marking the parchment with careful slashes. By the time September's warmth turns the air golden, the Constitution has shape. Pens scrawl its final words under gaslight. They stand together to review it. We the People looks bold at the top. Each of the remaining 39 men steps forward slowly, one by one, to sign the parchment. George Washington dips the quill and inscribes his name with deliberate loops. When Benjamin Franklin finishes, he says softly, "We must all hang together." The others chuckle quietly, a ripple of relief. No loud applause follows, only the deep exhale of collective effort. The gravity of their accomplishment is felt in the golden hush of that afternoon, with sunlight through the high windows offering a kind benediction. Yet even as the plan is made, it must be agreed upon by the people. In taverns and meeting halls, from New Hampshire's quiet fields to Georgia's gentle marshes, debate unfolds. Some voices are eager. The Federalists argue earnestly by lamplight that this sturdy plan will hold the Union together. Others, the anti-Federalists, speak in hushed tones of caution, fearful of giving too much power to a distant government. Federalist essays are quietly printed in newspapers. Their words are examined by families over bread and cheese and cups of tea. The essays argue that a central government might protect liberty and coordinate trade. Anti-Federalists warn that without clear guarantees, it may overreach. But always the volume of conversation is measured. Discussions happen in parlors and around hearths, often ending in the simple phrase, "We shall see," rather than with clanging arguments. To satisfy their concerns, Congress soon promises to add a list of fundamental rights. Over the following years, those rights become the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights. They name freedoms in gentle terms, the right to speak one's mind and worship as one chooses, the protection against having soldiers quartered at home without consent, the right to a fair trial by a jury of one's peers. In quiet sessions, lit by taper candles, these rights are ratified. The people rest easier knowing their voices have been remembered in law, that even if the government is strong, the laws say it cannot take away their basic freedoms. Finally, a new government begins under this Constitution. On a calm April day in 1789, George Washington stands at Federal Hall in New York City, his hand on a Bible, ready to take an oath. He reads the words in a steady voice. A small crowd of townsfolk, children and merchants in the spring sunshine, listen respectfully. A turkey buzzard soars silently above the rooftops as Washington closes his eyes in thought. When he opens them, he signs the oath with a firm pen. The nation exhales again in quiet relief and hope. No cannon booms, only a single bell tolling. It rings clearly once, as if to say, "It is done." Once President Washington tends to his duties with quiet dignity. In Philadelphia, which now serves as the temporary capital, he and the new Congress lay down foundations gently. The Treasury's coin press clinks softly as the first dollar coins are struck. The young post office route guides mail coaches along dusty roads, where riders nod politely to townsfolk and share a brief word with the tavern keepers. People wake to newspapers clutched in their hands, the day's news printed fresh, discussing an interstate tax or a foreign treaty in low voices over breakfast. In Congress halls, debates are formal yet calm. No one yells. Each man speaks his turn. When a vote is taken, men nod or shake hands quietly by each other's side. Through these years, everyday life is humble and simple. Most Americans live on farms. Picture a woman in a checkered dress at sunrise, pulling on a wool shawl as she steps into a dewy garden. She gathers eggs from the henhouse, the birds clucking softly. A boy opens the barn door to let cows out, their bells jingling in the morning calm. Fields lay ready for planting, rows of furrows carved by a plow, horses tied patiently to the hitching post. The air is often alive with gentle sounds. Neighbors drive hay carts past fields, the squeak of wooden wheels over a dirt road. In small towns, wooden printing presses stand in the corners of dim-shuttered buildings. Each morning, printers stoke their fires under cauldrons of ink, inking sheets with crisp words. The clink of metal type echoes in quiet rooms. When the presses start, the machine thumps in cadence as pages roll out to be spread across counters. The papers keep people connected. By candlelight, families read about state news and far-off events before sleep. In one Philadelphia printing shop, Benjamin Franklin's old press keeps running. Children shyly peek in. Franklin, with a gentle grin and spectacles perched on his nose, invites them closer to see the inked words dry on the page. Post offices are few and far between, but mail still finds its way. Riders on horseback clutch letters in their saddlebags. At inns and taverns along quiet roads, mail arrives and is carefully sorted. A young clerk in a patched waistcoat counts the letters and tears them open gently before passing them to eager hands. Mailboxes are not yet common, but the lines of people waiting are short and orderly, the conversations hushed with respectful patience. Taverns serve as the heartbeat of many villages. Inside, wooden tables cover dusty floors, lit by the glow of hearth flames. A tavern keeper, likely a steady woman by the bar, pours tea or cider with a smile as families and travelers talk in low voices. Fires crackle pleasantly in the stone hearth, and the air smells of roasting chestnuts and pine knots. Men sip warm ale or nibble on bread and cheese after a day's work. They speak quietly about the morning's chores, the coming harvest, or letters they have written to relatives. Travelers trade gentle tales of distant places, always lowering their voices to a respectful murmur. When night deepens, a fiddler might play a folk tune that sounds faintly like a lullaby, adding just a touch of music to the room, encouraging eyes to grow heavy. Women in this era take on many roles with calm resourcefulness. They rise early to churn butter and bake bread. Their hands move deftly as they spin wool into yarn or mend clothing by the light of a fireplace. In kitchens, the heat of the hearth and the aroma of porridge fill the room as mothers tend to children before school. In towns, some women run boarding houses or keep shops, greeting customers with serene hospitality. All the while, they whisper prayers that their families will be safe and prosperous. Over the years, they quietly lay the foundations for education and charity, starting small local schools, sewing bulletproof vests, tending injured soldiers in foggy camps as nurses, or writing down recipes and remedies passed down from mothers. Their influence is subtle, weaving the social fabric one stitch at a time. Some women even take part in the quiet revolution. Molly Pitcher, a name whispered around campfires, is known for carrying pitchers of water to thirsty soldiers on the battlefield. After her husband collapses, she steps up to his cannon and continues firing it with the gentleness of long practice. Others, like Deborah Sampson, disguise themselves as men and join the ranks silently, performing duties as soldiers and never revealing their secret. Abigail Adams, in quiet letters written to her husband John, becomes famous for asking him to remember the ladies. She jests about insisting that laws be kind to women as well as men. These words aren't shouted in halls, but they light sparks. In town squares and sitting rooms, men who read Abigail's words find themselves thoughtful. The idea that this new country might include all voices, even those hushed during the Revolution, begins to take hold. Black. Americans have their own quiet struggles and quiet bravery. Many fought for independence. Crispus Attucks, remembered in hushed tones, gave his life at the Boston Massacre in 1770, a solemn sacrifice on a cold night that some speak of reverently. During battles and encampments, black soldiers kneel side by side with white soldiers, their breaths forming clouds in the cold air as they shoulder muskets. One famous example is Salem Poor, a black man who fought courageously at Bunker Hill. After a heated volley, he and others kneel down to reload, unafraid, and later General Washington himself quietly praises his bravery. Others like Peter Salem and Titus remain steadfast through skirmishes, sharing the same mud tents and meager meals with their comrades. They whisper and pray together for strength to endure. Yet after the war, the promise of liberty is incomplete. In northern states, quiet debates begin. Some hold early conventions to gradually end slavery. Quaker gatherings in Philadelphia solemnly vote to free those they hold in servitude. Freedmen gather in churches and small schools to learn reading and writing in the peaceful evenings, helping each other by the dim oil lamp. In Boston, Phyllis Wheatley, the young black poet, pens verses of freedom and sends them to far leaders. In London or Paris, people read her words in print and nod to the gentle eloquence from across the sea. In the South, many remain enslaved and change comes slowly. Still, tiny seeds of hope grow. A freed black man in Charleston quietly opens a school for other freedmen. A family in Virginia, manumitted in a will, plants a vegetable garden to sustain themselves in peace. They pray softly each night for a future where their children can walk freely. Native American communities feel the effects of these changes keenly. Some tribes, like the Iroquois in the north, have watched quietly from deep forests. Leaders like Corn Planter travel to early peace councils to meet the Americans face to face. The meetings are polite and somber. Corn Planter's voice is low as he pleads for respect for his people's lands. Congressmen reply with the same gravity, promising to honor the treaties they make. Meanwhile, in the Deep South, the Cherokee and Chickasaw hold their own councils, offering friendship if promised only to be moved slowly west. They make their decisions in sunlit lodges, arms crossed on their chests, each word chosen with care. No war cries mark the treaties. They are sealed with tobacco and quiet gestures of peace. Other groups carve out quiet lives in the new nation. German and Scots-Irish immigrants build log cabins and strong kinship networks, often preferring to live along ridges and hollows. They speak in dialect, gather in barns to sing old songs, and open small taverns or carpentry shops in rural areas. A Swiss watchmaker in Pennsylvania meticulously assembles his timepiece in a softly lit workshop. A French Huguenot family tends a small vineyard. In Virginia, their voices mixing French and English in gentle conversation as they pick grapes. Native-born and newcomer alike find that, though government and battle fade, daily life with its chores and comforts continues steadily. Through all these scenes, certain figures appear like quiet guardians of history. George Washington is one such figure. Early in the mornings, he can be seen at Mount Vernon, overseeing the fields of his plantation, hands folded behind his back, the morning air cool as he breathes in. He is calm and pensive, reading reports by candlelight. Later, he often visits the dairy barn or admires the Potomac from a balcony, always remaining humble despite his fame. Benjamin Franklin is another familiar presence. In a small study illuminated by a single lamp, his face partly in shadow, he blows gently on his pipe and smiles at a letter. He wears his long fur cap, spectacles on the end of his nose. Whenever young people stop by, he greets them with a chuckle. By a tranquil hearth, he may share a story about his experiments with electricity, watching the firelight dance in his eyes. He later steps to greet the French king or the newly freed New York Assembly, not boasting, but speaking in measured tones and nods of good humor. Thomas Jefferson can be found at Monticello, strolling in peaceful gardens. One morning, he stands under blossoming apple trees, selecting pieces for breakfast. In his house, he sits at a simple desk to write. On July the 2nd, 1776, he pens his draft of the Declaration of Independence by the morning sun, his posture relaxed yet focused. Though his words will travel far, his voice, as he reads them aloud to the committee, is still gentle and deliberate. Alexander Hamilton, tall and energetic, sometimes steps aside into quiet corners of New York. He might be caught writing letters by a window in the glow of dawn, outlining plans for trade or a bank. His brow might furrow in thought, but his pen strokes remain steady, turning ideas into page after page of figures and arguments. John Adams, stern yet loving, takes evening walks around Braintree. He might clasp his cravat as he considers a letter from Abigail. They enjoy similar moonlit moments at night, far apart, but looking at the same stars. Adams's voice in letters is firm but warm, urging respect and fair laws. James Madison, slight and thoughtful, can be seen reading by candlelight under a young walnut tree. In the Constitutional Convention, when voices heated, Madison often sat back, quill in hand, silently noting compromises until he spoke up to guide others with calm reason. Sometimes all of these people stand together in unity, their dialogue never raised above a whisper. Sometimes one or two appear alone, their thoughts echoing in private, but always they speak as if telling a bedtime story, measured, caring, but not frightening. Over fields and in town squares, the seasons shift quietly. The sun sets gently over Independence Hall in 1776 after the Declaration is signed. The ink is barely dry on parchment and candles burn low. Outside, night crickets chirp as an owl hoots in the distance. Snowflakes drift on the horizon at Valley Forge, each flake unique, settling softly on the ground. Smoke curls from chimney tops in Philadelphia at winter's edge, where Benjamin Franklin quietly encourages neighbors to warm their houses. In the spring, cherry blossoms appear outside Washington's home. The rustle of those pink petals is like a gentle drumbeat heralding the new republic. Farmers wear wool in cool weather and cotton in warm, moving at a natural pace as they spin yarn on a spring afternoon. A sailboat glides silently up a wide river, carrying goods that smell of tar in the ocean breeze. Every element of life in this time carries a soft tone. The sound of a musket firing is sharp, yes, but in the morning after a battle, it becomes just part of the quiet geography of the field. The cry of liberty, heard on a hillside, is brave, but here it settles into the hush of conversation around a fire as men plan to plant crops the next day. Money changing hands in a shop, children reading at a kitchen table, each moment becomes like a gentle melody. If all this were a dream, we would simply float among these scenes, enveloped in warmth and history. Though we speak of wars and debates, they are like distant thunder heard only as rain falling softly on village roofs. Each detail is meant to be observed, not to stir anger or fear. So as you lie in bed, feel the breeze of the 1780s rustling through the curtains of a modest farmhouse. Listen to the distant owl's cry as George Washington pens a letter, or smell the baking bread from Martha's kitchen. Know that each name and each event we pass tonight is part of a great tapestry woven gently through years of calm mornings, hard work, and quiet dreams of a new nation. Now the candle in our story is burning low. The founders have created what they can, with pens and voices hushed in unity. America's story does not end here, but for tonight, we rest beside our ancestors. Let the hush of history lull you into sleep. The pages of time will turn softly as dawn arrives, and when you awake, a new day will be waiting. Common sense is an important part of this era's story. In January 1776, Thomas Paine sits alone at a small wooden desk, quill in hand. In a dimly lit barn behind a tavern, he writes with rapid strokes. The ceiling rafters are high above, but his words are close and urgent. Paine pens arguments that become common sense, a pamphlet that reaches the eyes of colonists from Massachusetts to Virginia. By February, Carriages and stagecoaches carry copies of Common Sense between towns. In taverns and parlors, farmers and shopkeepers read it by candlelight. It stirs them, but quietly. They nod and pass it on. The ideas take root quietly. Perhaps a farmer reads a line and drops it into conversation with his neighbor over dinner, saying only, "He has a point," in a humble tone. And the neighbor replies softly, "Indeed," and together they contemplate what freedom might mean without raising their voices. As the ideas of independence settle in minds, the summer of 1776 arrives. July brings long days of sunlight over Philadelphia. Delegates of the Second Continental Congress sit with papers and ink. Inside Independence Hall, John Adams speaks in a controlled, earnest tone about the rights of people. Thomas Jefferson, back at his Virginia plantation, is already at a sturdy oak table with the morning sun over his shoulder. He drafts the Declaration of Independence in neat script. Meanwhile, on the busy street outside in Philadelphia, a blacksmith's hammer rings at steady intervals, but in the Congress chamber that sound fades, and every ear strains for the next whispered debate. The men speak calmly about liberty and rights, as if discussing the weather rather than fomenting revolution. Under the soft July sun, after signing the Declaration, the men step out of the hall. They stretch quietly after long hours. Birds chirp in the trees. Benjamin Franklin looks up at the clear blue sky and quietly remarks to the others, "We have indeed done something." No fireworks or proclamations follow immediately. Instead, newspaper presses begin their rhythmic thumps in corners of the city, turning the news into crisp columns that circulate throughout the colonies. At dusk, neighbors gather on porches reading by candlelight about this momentous act. They share hushed hopes and kindling pride, each family lit softly by oil lamps. The mood is reverent yet gentle. One might say the country breathes more evenly now that the Declaration is out in the open. The summer after independence brings unexpected turns. 1777 is a year of both growth and fear. Spring and summer are filled with perspiration and drill. Valley Forge itself is still a dream yet to come. This year, the war moves on toward the north. But one evening, in a house near Saratoga, two men meet quietly over dinner. It is General Burgoyne and an American officer who has just captured some British scouts. They eat their stew in silence, understanding that this war has become personal. More quietly, they speak of homes left behind. "My children have just learned their letters," says Burgoyne. "And mine await a new baby," replies the officer softly. They trade no threats, only a sad smile for each other's fate. Later, on October 17th, 1777, the day Burgoyne surrenders, Colonel Daniel Morgan and his riflemen keep night watch under the stars. They see the British tricolor being folded. The scene is peaceful. Generals meet after the formalities, not with celebration, but with a quiet relief. Bottles of cider are passed around instead of shot glasses, and toasts are made in whispers, honoring bravery and the hope of peace. There is no triumphalist fanfare, only understanding nods that something important has happened. Meanwhile, back at Valley Forge, the winter of 1777 to 1778 settles like a blanket. Snow covers the ground, soldiers plod through the drifts, and every footstep groans in the quiet cold. Here and there, Smoke rises from chimneys of new huts. Baron von Steuben, a stern but kindly drill master, calls men to the parade ground to repeat steps. Eyes right, firelock by the left. The crisp sound of muskets is heard in the still air. Though his accent is thick, the soldiers do their best to understand. For months, the drills continue. The American men do not complain aloud. They simply do the work. Slowly, under his guidance, they form into better ranks. Yet through it all, the nights bring warmth of fellowship, shared pots of soup, whispered prayers at dusk, quiet discussions around small fires about who they will marry when all of this is over. These moments give them strength. At the same time, on the frontier, pioneers clear land deliberately. A family in Kentucky sleeps in a cabin as winter ends. They have only an axe and each other's help to smooth out the forest. By spring, fields of corn stand tall, bright green against the early morning. The boy heads out each dawn with his father to patrol the land. They hear distant howls but press on carefully, talking softly about sightings of buffalo miles away. When they return to the cabin at dusk, it smells of rabbit stew and baking bread. The mother keeps watch by the door, musket lying by her side, even as she serves dinner. It's not fear that keeps them alert, but a protective peace. They feel safe within their household as a new order takes root in the country. In 1779, America's story moves south. The deep woods of Georgia and the Carolinas hear small fights, but also the laughter of children. A blacksmith named James quietly rebels in his forge. He decides to melt down old broken slave shackles and fashion them into horseshoes and plow points. Each hammer ring echoes hope. The metal that once bound people now helps them farm. It is not written in any law book, but day by day, men and women like James shape something new and brighter without fanfare, letting their silent actions speak for themselves. By 1780, the war is in its last throes. Washington's army marches south from Morristown on a calm summer morning. Muskets are cleaned and sharpened. Camp followers, women, children, and loyal dogs, keep to the edges of the column. Among them is Margaret Corbin. She had carried water to her husband at the Battle of Fort Washington years earlier. Now, after her husband's injury, Margaret quietly shoulders his musket on the march, blending into the line. Her face, determined but calm, looks forward. Nobody comments on what she does. To them, she is simply another soldier who stepped up to carry her share of the burden. As winter ends and spring comes, something changes in hearts everywhere. The lull of war's thunder is felt as a distant drum. The year 1781 dawns gently. In the field at Yorktown, on the morning of October 19th, a hush falls as the last British unit lays down arms. General Washington calmly inspects the scene with General Cornwallis. No one cheers at this final surrender. No, it's after all a final end to years of sacrifice. The muskets are stacked, and a little boy blowing on a fife near the rear of camp stops playing, as if sensing that this is a moment of solemn transition. The only sound is a mild wind stirring the fallen leaves. Finally, a church bell rings in the distance, as though to say it's high noon, but also as if it carries the weight of what has just happened. The field stays silent. On both sides, the men clasp shoulders quietly. Back home, shouts of peace ripple through towns. Bells begin to toll, and yet the sound is soft, almost as though the wind carries them gently. In Portsmouth or Philadelphia, or anywhere in between, families hug along country paths. In cozy fireside rooms, people smile with tears and lay dinner hands on shoulders. The fighters return, but they return carefully, one by one, as if stepping back into a dream. In a village square, children chase a hoop across the grass when they hear that an armistice was signed. They laugh with reckless joy, but soon the parents gather them up into quiet kisses and warm blankets. Now, with the war behind them, the new United States faces challenges of peace. Men gather again in halls, this time to fix the old problems. They realize that under the Articles of Confederation, each state prints its own money. A quiet worry spreads. The paper notes are losing value. Farmers bring their grain to market, but the coins that come back are few. In a lodge in Massachusetts, neighbors sit in a circle in 1786, quietly anxious. Daniel Shays, still leading his group, explains in measured tones, "We ask only that our lives not be taken away for inability to pay." Eventually, after tense meetings, local officials agree to suspend some seizures. The farmers nod in relief and go home. Early in 1787, some of these farmers do indeed march toward Springfield again. They pass through silent countryside. The cold air of winter still lingers on pine boughs. Their muskets go hang over their shoulders as they walk. They meet armed guards at a bridge. A brief conversation ensues, voices barely above a murmur. The farmers are politely turned back with the promise of hearing. The journey ends quietly, with everyone returning home to the comfort of family fires. These difficulties lead to the Philadelphia Summer and the Constitutional Convention. Delegates arrive one by one. John Hancock, dressed in fine clothes, arrives slightly out of breath. He apologizes quietly for being late, saying he dawdled to avoid a fuss. When he enters the hall on May 25th, 1787, everyone stands out of respect. Franklin offers a comfortable seat. Chairs creak as the men sit, their quills at the ready. They greet each other with nods and polite smiles. On that first evening, light from the setting sun glows through the windows. The wooden shutters are closed so nobody inside can be overheard. Franklin leans forward. "I hope we can find some middle way," he says gently. The others nod. In this gathering, they reason like a family around the dinner table. Late one night, Benjamin Franklin leans back in his chair. He calmly remarks, "Mr. President, we indeed seem to have pooled wisdom from many of us." Around him, younger men laugh softly, feeling a weight of accomplishment. Outside, the stars twinkle, silent. They debate how to give each state a voice. Senators and representatives, large and small. They sip lukewarm water from glasses as they find a path. At last, they agree on a two-house Congress, one reflecting population, another giving every state 2 members. When the corner is turned, the room almost brightens like the day coming through the windows. The corner of early morning sees them nodding in unison, because they have bridged what seemed an unpassable gap. A soft chuckle sometimes circles, and they move on. Slavery is a heavy subject, but even there they speak softly. Gentle, thoughtful men discuss how to count human lives. It is not done loudly. They draw lines on paper, murmuring numbers. Finally, they settle to counting 3 of every 5 enslaved people for representation and taxes. It is a grim compromise, but they vow to discuss it again later. Franklin quietly assures them, "We may one day wish to look back and see we did what we thought we must." They exchange tired smiles, understanding at least there is hope in a plan. By the time September's warmth turns the air golden, the Constitution has shape. Pens scribble its words. We the people, in quiet determination. It is done. The document glows on parchment and candlelight as tired eyes from every colony look upon it. Some sigh softly in relief. Outside, crickets begin their evening song. The tired delegates pat each other on the back. They are exhausted, but proud that in this cramped room, with windows shuttered and doors locked tight, they have formed the blueprint for a nation. Yet now this plan must meet the people. In taverns and meeting halls from New England to Georgia, debate continues. Some voices are still eager. Federalists argue gently that this sturdy framework will hold the Union together. Others, the anti-federalists, voice caution. They worry softly that it might need a few more guarantees. Debate continues in loving homes around kitchen fires as families read the documents to each other. Occasionally, an elder reads a portion of the Federalist Papers aloud so everyone listens. The arguments are civil. There's no shouting or threats. They gather in a kind of town hall calm. In time, more votes are cast, more papers circulated, and soon enough, 9 states say yes. And so, the new government begins under the Constitution. In April 1789, the streets of New York City wake up buzzingly, but still gently. Merchants sweep steps at dawn. Children roll hoops down lanes. The church bell tolls once as a signal for the day. Inside Federal Hall, a clean white table is set for the oath. Washington lays his hand on a Bible, and around him sit leaders with their morning letters. At high noon, he recites the presidential oath. Time seems to slow. The day's business stops for that moment. When he says, "I do solemnly swear," his voice rings steady and sure. Those present bow deeply when he finishes. A church bell rings again in celebration, and in the streets, people pause and clap softly. With that single act, the new government truly is born. The first cabinet gathers not in ceremony, but in earnest. John Adams quietly sits as vice president in the Senate chamber, wearing his powdered wig and listening to the clerk. In the corners of the room, senators stand and speak in turns, giving their votes about who should run the courts and finances. Outside on the cobblestones, farmers in their boots and Sunday coats chat softly, hoping their new government will keep peace and build roads. Inside the public buildings, paintings of past events, the Parsons Field at Lexington, the signing of the Declaration, line the halls. These images teach by staying on walls, showing farm fields and calm faces rather than battles. People walk through halls with petitions and requests, quietly optimistic. Benjamin Franklin, though frail and elderly, attends one of these sessions to meet the new generation. Even in his last days, he shakes their hands with a gentle smile, saying only, "Well done, boys." Washington's wife, Martha, helps in her own quiet way. In winter, she knits wool blankets and drapes them across beds. In the morning, she might carry a candle and pause to draw open the curtains to greet the soft dawn. She is always courteous and makes every guest feel welcome in the house. Men regard her kindly as the calm matron of the new first family. They admire her for hosting dinners with a modest grace, never demanding fuss or special privileges. In the evening, she often sets out tea and light conversation for her husband's cabinet guests, chatting softly with the politicians' wives about domestic news, never intruding into politics. Every day in this young country, life holds peaceful patterns. In homes, quilts and dried herbs hang from rafters. Wells in front yards and chime gently when water is drawn. Smoke rises straight and slow into clear skies at breakfast. No city is overcrowded. Even Philadelphia's streets are mostly empty of noise. A visitor might think there are no children around at all, until one runs by curtsying at the road's end, their laughter echoing softly off brick walls. In these years, the concept of leisure appears. Men sometimes take afternoon naps under shade trees or read at their desks. Women spend evenings at sewing circles or quilting bees. The clicking of needles almost musical. Town criers still announce news in the mornings. Congress meets at noon, they might say in a clear voice, but nobody has to shout to be heard. Rather, neighbors stroll over to listen at the center square, as one might cross the lawn to pick flowers. Education takes root gradually and quietly. A small schoolhouse with clapboard walls and a singular bell stands in each village. A teacher recites lessons on an ABC chart, children copying each word on slates. Benjamin Franklin's old library in Philadelphia opens on gentle mornings to a few readers, each paging through books in a hush. A few colleges grow, offering reading rooms with tables and a single candle lamp at night for those who wish to study law, philosophy, or medicine. Each institution is intimate, a dozen students instead of hundreds, each learning by the light of a window or candle. Everything moves at a soft, rural pace. Few people travel far, and travel is comfortable but slow. A Virginia gentleman journeys by stagecoach to the capital in 1789. The seats are padded, but the roads are often rutted and dusty. He stops at taverns along the way, where strangers share gentle greetings over a dinner of meat and potatoes. At night, he sleeps in a feather bed. He arrives at the seat of government in Philadelphia under a mild rain, fresh for deliberation. Even the natural environment seems kinder now. Oaks and maples tower in forests, leaves unfurling on spring mornings like a silent orchestra warming up. Crickets trill into the night as fields cool after sunset. Wolves howl only briefly at midnight before retreating, hearing the quiet that has fallen on the new land. Rivers run with gentle currents and are quiet most of the year. When cities expand, they do so slowly, leaving large patches of woods and gardens. It is as if the earth itself leans back to watch as this new country finds its footing. Let us not forget those who remained quiet on the sidelines. Women, though, unable to vote, find influence in small ways. They read by fireside to each other, encouraging their children to learn to read and write. A woman might teach her daughter how to run a small store of goods at home, whispering about responsibility and care. Abigail Adams once joked in a letter that if lawgivers were not careful, we will rise up from our knees. Men did hear her words. In time, men in Congress mull over the role of women in this new country, at least talking of educating girls in every state. And with each passing year, more girls begin to attend academies or have tutors at home, learning their letters and mathematics quietly, side by side with boys. Black Americans create paths of advancement too. Phyllis Wheatley's poems continue to circulate after the war. In 1775, she sent to General Washington a poem of praise. Now, as independence is won, her lines are read aloud in dinner parlors, admired for their gentle eloquence. Benjamin Banneker, a free black mathematician, publishes almanacs that carry images of the cosmos. He delivers them to his neighbors under his arm, sharing wisdom with a smile. Others, like Richard Allen, build a church in Philadelphia where people pray in peace. Each of these steps is small and often unheralded, but they are powerful on a personal level. They remind everyone that bravery and perseverance lived in humble places as well as on fields of battle. As for native peoples, many work to adapt to the new borders. Some travel to the frontier towns to trade. A Potawatomi chief might visit a fair in Ohio, respectfully buying cloth and kettles. He carries tobacco for trade and stories in his heart. At night, he sleeps in a cabin the settlers have offered, quietly agreeing to teach some words of his language to their children. Others remain living as they have for generations, living in parallel worlds. They listen to the quiet negotiations of the states, as if hearing far away thunder, trying to guess what it means for their hunting grounds. They remember their elders saying that long ago, everything was one land. In that silence, they watch all the fields of wheat wave in the distance, wondering what tomorrow will bring. Through all these scenes, nighttime comes softly to each day. The fields grow quiet as dusk falls, cows low in the barn, the songs of birds fade, the last rooster calls. Doors are closed, candles doused. There is a lullaby in the breeze that carries scents of pine and simmering stew. Each chapter we have traveled ends as a scene in a bedtime story, with the land itself dozing off, breathing lightly. As our voices grow softer, recall that the story of these years is more about people doing ordinary things for freedom than about clashing swords. In the quiet of the post-revolution dawn, men like George Washington and women like Abigail Adams keep farming and cooking, writing and praying. Black people who fought now tend to families and churches. Native tribes carefully watch the skies and forests, holding on to dreams. All are part of this soft history, rich, complex, but told here without danger, merely in calm observation. We have walked through snowy marches and peaceful farms, spent a night by candle with Jefferson and Franklin, and have seen new laws take root like seedlings. It is enough for tonight. The founding era has ended for now, but the world will carry on quietly until our waking. Close your eyes and feel the warm glow of this story. The world we have visited is settling into sleep, much like you are. Let the gentle rhythm of early America carry you to dreamland. Now the candle in our story is burning low. The founders have done what they can, with pens and voices hushed in unity. America's story does not end here, but for tonight we rest beside our ancestors. Let the hush of history lull you into sleep. The pages of time will turn softly as dawn arrives, and when you awake, a new day will be waiting. In this quiet sleep, listen again to the gentle sounds of the era. The last musket is locked away. The last quill rests on its stand. The world you hear now is not of cannon fire or raucous debate, but the stillness of late night. Imagine once more the room of a soldier's wife in late 1783. By her bedside, a letter from her husband lies open. The candles are nearly out, dripping small wax tears. She reads, "My love, All is quiet here, and soon I will be home. The words are simple, but each sentence is savored. The woman folds the letter carefully and places it under her pillow. She closes her eyes in the quiet, imagining the peaceful dawn when they will be reunited. Or picture a classroom in 1790 lit only by the moon's silvery light through a window. A teacher stands by a map of the new United States. His students are yawning softly, though he continues speaking about citizenship in a low, calm voice. The children's attention drifts to the night sky, perhaps a firefly dancing outside, and their eyelids grow heavy. One by one, the students stop taking notes and simply watch the world outside, lulled by their teacher's gentle words on virtue and community. Think of yourself under a cozy quilt. The day has been long, and you are very near sleep. You feel the gentle rise and fall of your chest, matching the slow rhythm of the countryside breeze. Each breath is as soft and deep as the slow whisper of wind through the trees. There are no heavy burdens on your shoulders, just the warmth of the covers and the dim glow of dreams beginning to form. Across the land, families have already draped their households in calm. In Philadelphia, a cat curls on a windowsill, purring quietly into its sleep. In the Virginia countryside, someone's candle is finally extinguished, leaving only the hush of crickets outside. In Maine, up north, chimneys have settled to smoldering embers. No more cooking, no more action. You have traveled through history tonight. You have walked with farmers in morning light and congressmen in candlelight. You have rested beside soldiers and dreamed of peace with statesmen. Now, as this voice quiets, feel the comfort of these gentle images. Let them cradle you gently, as the earth itself cradles its people. When the age of the founders and revolutionaries is finally closed, it leaves behind something quiet, not strife, but the legacy of caring work. Look out at the world outside your mind's eye. Tomorrow's dawn will come, but for now all is still as soft as your pillows. So let us end here, in this circle of history and sleep. Think of the very last porch light turning off in our story. The final family has tucked in for the night. A dog barks twice in the distance, and all is calm again. You are safe. Your eyelids feel heavy. Your breathing is even. The American Revolution has passed, and all that remains is memory and comfort. Now, dear listener, drift to sleep under these old stars. Good night.